Conclusions after 3 years of recording video for the internet. Now, first of all, I will explain a little bit of the story and how I came to making videos. Second of all, I will just list all the things that I think I've learned in the current strategy, which I am now implementing or still doing. And therefore, let's start with point one. Point one is that I think I have a need in me to tell others about the things I've experienced or learned. Now, this need in school was basically fulfilled with all the different subjects, and I also had friends, but I rarely talked to friends about the things that I actually was interested in. It was more so I didn't talk to friends about the things I was interested in. So I eventually came into older years, so basically I grew older, and then I had a few friends with which I could also talk about various things. But there seemed to be also kind of a pointlessness of just talking to somebody else with basically the conversation, for example, not being recorded, and after 3 days maybe you both have forgotten everything you ever said. There basically is a lack, I think, or there might be a lack of a goal for this conversation. Of course, the goal of a conversation maybe is to intensify the relationship in some way or another, to share things, to show the other person something, and the other person shows something in return. But the idea that you could basically amplify this message and use maybe an algorithm to target specific people that are actually already kind of interested in this kind of thing just seemed so... It just seemed to give the whole thing kind of a purpose. If I now talk, and I talk to a friend, then usually it seems like I try to convince the friend of something. Or I just listen, which means that I am of service. But if I just listen and am of service and am kind of... if I'm of service to other people, and that's kind of the main thing I try to do with other people, then I cannot really fulfill the need of me talking about the things I really want to talk about. So therefore, this seemed to be a very fortunate outlet, and I enjoyed the process of writing about things that were interesting to me really, really much. So I began in about 2017, I began writing on a few different blogs, basically. I registered a few domains, and then I began writing. Now what I noticed is that I thought I was as good as this, and I actually was as good as -10 to the ground. So as I read again and again what I've actually written, it seemed that it was actually quite bad. So what I realized is that I needed to write again and again and again and again and again. Just like with all the other things I did again and again and again. I began playing guitar at age 6 and I was not very good at it. It took years basically until there was ever a moment of joy in playing the guitar. Before it was just not fun. Now this actually happened again because I didn't learn to play according to notes, but I just learned to play according to sheets, but I just played by ear, basically by repetition and by rehearsal. Now, we enter 2017, I post basically a few things online, but basically nobody is interested. There is also this other lane of posting on the internet, which is Instagram. And Instagram was this new kind of thing that existed back then already for a few years. I think it was founded in, 2011. But I was not on Instagram. I was on Facebook, but I didn't post pictures on Facebook, and the whole idea just seemed not very useful to me. But I also at the same time went into chat messaging, and the rabbit hole of chat messaging people that became kind of deeper and deeper already. But let's go back to the blogging. I wrote all of these things, and the main problem, I think, is the following. If I speak, I am faster compared to when I blog. When I blog, it has to be kind of very good. There also has to be a coherent outline and so on and so forth. When I speak, especially just to someone else, and maybe if I use the camera, just as speaking to someone else, the someone else just being the other person basically on the other end of the phone in my eyes. So I am here in front of the camera and somebody will watch it on their phone and then the same distance kind of from the phone again. So it is basically just a mirroring device for the person that eventually views it or doesn't. Now, I knew I had to try video, and I also tried video a few times, but it was just so horrible. I already back in 2017 made a few videos about maybe here Google and big data and so on and so forth, and maybe look out for your own data. The problem was that I tried to portray somebody that I was not. I think this is the main problem, that existed in the beginning. Because there was such a big discrepancy between who I actually was and what I thought I could be, I tried to approach this. And as I tried to approach this, it basically resulted in me trying to portray something I was not really. And I tried many times. Of course, there were other issues as well. The issue, for example, that you couldn't just record from your phone, or at least I couldn't, because the microphone was so bad. And then I had a camera and the microphone for the camera, and then the lens made noises when adjusting the focus and so on and so forth. So basically, up until the point where I actually got a new phone, the Galaxy S10, it wasn't really possible for me to record videos in a standardized way and also in an efficient way. Of course, I could have made it happen. People already recorded video for decades, but I couldn't make it happen for me. Now, I got the Galaxy S10 in 2019 after I broke my camera, and then it basically took another year. I already recorded some things here and there. Oh, I am now in this new city. What if I just recorded a short of me in this new city? I think I actually did something later on and I made something of this footage that I recorded there. So I tried, but I just never posted anything because what was missing was a framework. And this framework is what I would then develop basically in the last 3 years. In late 2020, then, basically after a year of having the Galaxy S10 and also having recorded a few videos for myself already, just self-documentation, the problem was just that it was not in English. And because I speak another language and also not specifically the other language very well, because I actually have a regional dialogue of this language, it meant that I couldn't even record in this normal language without sounding like a weirdo, at least to my ears. So I basically only had the option of either recording English, but I couldn't really speak properly English, at least for long periods of time, and sophisticated to a certain extent. I don't say that I'm now sophisticated, but at least a little bit more than before. And the other option being my local dialect, which is what I usually would speak in my head, and also what I eventually I sometimes in the past also wrote in this dialect on chat and so on and so forth, but I also was able to produce normal high language, as the language is called, that is spoken where I'm from. Now, English, developing my English as a skill, it took lots of time. And of course I had English in school, and I also had a few tests where I had to speak proper English, but I was really bad at it. It only came over the last years, actually, not over the last years, but basically when I began to study, I was exposed to more and more people from international origin, and so therefore I had to speak English on a frequent and more frequent basis, and this is what got me actually into English. Less so my travels, because I haven't traveled basically in all of those years. Very minimally. Only for a few days maybe of the year in total, in all of the years. Now, I had to develop the skill, and basically I knew it took a lot of time. So in the beginning I just didn't know what to do. I tried recording YouTube, and I wanted to be like Casey Neistat, maybe running around. I also bought a skateboard, and I also made a route, basically a travel through Europe, and I tried to record footage on there, and I wanted to make a big series out of this. The problem was just I didn't know really what to make out of this. I didn't really have a target in mind, and because I had so little experience, I also didn't know what the target should be. So, when late 2020 rolled around and I had the phone, I eventually just started posting on TikTok. I basically discovered TikTok like 2 or 3 months before, and I heard people like Gary Vaynerchuk talk about TikTok, and so I just decided I would go on to TikTok. Why? Because it was a different platform. It was not like the big thing that was YouTube, and if I made videos for YouTube, then I should make proper videos, and then I would have to compare myself to all the other people I already knew on YouTube. So it was kind of an open door into the unknown, and that was TikTok. So in the beginning I tried making a few sketches, because that's what all the other people also did on there. And then I had the idea, what if I just talk about things? And it would be basically, if the content, the normal content was here, then in terms of interest, my content would be there. Because me just talking about things next to somebody dancing somewhere to some music and with loud music and so on and so forth would probably be a little bit of a contrast. I also didn't really know if there were people already on there that actually posted stuff like this. I also at this point didn't see it yet, and I tried to avoid the algorithm getting adapted to me because I eventually knew that this would be my despise. I don't know if despise is the right word, but I just knew that I would get sucked into it, just like I got sucked into YouTube a few years back. Now, and as I did also with series and TV, and also with books I read in the past, with fiction books basically, where I entered into this new world, and then my normal life would just be boring compared to what happened there, because obviously it was more interesting, because people have to write more interesting compared to the normal life in order to suck people into these worlds. Now, of course, these worlds are nice, but if these worlds consist out of other people's lives, and then you, in return, have less and less time for your actual own life, then this is maybe a suboptimal adaptation. Now, I started posting on TikTok. So in the beginning, I started not recording my face because I didn't really want to post. Maybe I didn't want to post my face on there. Maybe I had privacy concerns. I didn't really know what to do. So I recorded basically similar shorts to what I also saw on TikTok. This was me talking about a camera, maybe with my phone pointed to the camera. But I noticed this took a very long time. There is a lot of effort that goes into clipping videos. And then in the beginning I decided I would just post on TikTok and I would delete all the files after it. This seemed like the most reasonable choice. I eventually realized this was not the most reasonable choice, because eventually I would be chained to TikTok. And this would also eventually mean that if I wanted to go to another platform, or if TikTok banned me for some reason or banned one channel, I just couldn't go to another platform if I used the TikTok editor. So I searched for different editing programs on my phone. I also went back to my notebook again and again and again. But my notebook and editing meant that I would have to have a notebook that was capable of good Full HD video editing, and then also the file management. And this was something I'd already had tried in the past. I have cut a few small videos in the past, and it was just hours and hours and hours of recording. Similar with photo editing. Just hours and hours and hours that go into optimizing one single picture, and then maybe the person that you portrayed on this picture doesn't like because you chose the wrong picture. So all of this time this time is spent on a very high risk, you could say, because eventually what the other person finds out is that maybe they wanted another picture, and similar maybe with the video. If you over optimize for a single target and the target is kind of unknown, then, well, of course you cannot optimize for a target that is unknown, but if the target audience is the other person that you portrayed in this picture, or also maybe the viewer, you maybe in the video, of the video that you then watch, and I optimized for the wrong thing and not for you, then this also might be suboptimal behavior. So after playing around, I realized I had to be simple, because the less variables I use, the less I can basically decide again and again to do these variables differently. So if I just don't use any music at all, then I don't have copyright issues. Then I don't have to have a big plan of using this music here, but then YouTube in the future, maybe in 2 years, will also have shorts, which actually then happened. And maybe Instagram and Facebook would also have shorts, which then also happened, but Instagram at this point in time had already kind of video, but it was only till 60 seconds and not vertical and just in this square format. Or maybe it already had introduced 16:9, I don't know, or 9:16 rather. So I realized I had to make it very, very simple. What if I went basically against all of the things that TikTok showed me, and I just spoke in front of the camera? I wouldn't use any music. I tried to keep the videos as simple as possible, and I also wouldn't cut the videos. I would just record me talking, and if the video went really bad, then I would also post it. So I would record just video after video after video, and then ideally I would have a progression that went upwards. And another thing I came up with is the idea that maybe if of all the things I'm interested in, there are things that other people are interested in. So this would be one group, one interest. So if one person has an interest, the likelihood that the person has also an interest that I also have is, well, lower compared to having one interest that I also have. So because there is an intersection, and because with interests, there is basically, if there are two interests, and out of all of these people that exist on Earth, the likelihood that two people have the same interest is only this. maybe it's a bigger intersection, maybe it's less of an intersection. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that it's just less likely. It is just less likely. What this means is that the shorter the video, the less of an intersection you need to have. And also, the more targeted the video to a specific interest, the more targeted the video to a specific interest is. And you don't have to have somebody be interested in skiing as well as cooking pancakes. Now, what this meant practically is that instead of posting everything I wanted to post onto one channel, I realized I had to create multiple channels. One maybe for self-management, one maybe for kind of abstract ideas, one maybe for talking about health and fitness and so on and so forth. One maybe where I would talk about cooking, because cooking and health and might also be somewhat different. I eventually realized that if I just talked about one topic enough and enough and enough, or again and again and again is what I wanted to say, is that what this would lead me towards is splitting another channel from this bigger channel. And then I would create another one and another one and another one. What this eventually means is that my time is split across more and more channels. As my time is split across more and more channels, the frequency of the videos I am able to produce will eventually go down, because I'm only able to produce so many videos. Now, I posted a few videos on TikTok, and I decided I would post daily on TikTok. Every single day I would post at least one video. I just didn't know how many videos I should post. There were people online that said like maybe up to 12, maybe up to 16, but at the same time they posted videos where they just would stitch something else. And in the beginning I would also stitch videos. I would take another video, so this is what a stitch is, and then you basically cut it, and after the cut, it is you. You could also do different things where you would react, and I would also try this out in the beginning, and it seemed to be a big way of, or a smart way, a super smart way of making up new content. But what I realized is that in order to react to something, I would have to watch this. And in order to watch this, I would expose myself more and more to TikTok. And as I would expose myself more and more to TikTok, I would become more and more prone to TikTok's algorithm. Which also kind of eventually then led into me watching TikTok for a few nights. And this is when I realized I had to get off of TikTok. I still didn't really know what to do, because YouTube still didn't have shorts properly. They were still testing shorts, I think, in India. And Facebook maybe introduced shorts, would later on introduce shorts, so I basically had nowhere to go. And if I then would switch over to YouTube, I just didn't know what to make videos about even, because I just made videos that were like at max 60 seconds. But yeah, well, I didn't really know what to do. I just kept posting on TikTok, and it kept sucking me into the app, and I knew it was a problem, but I couldn't solve it because there were no alternatives, and I maybe could make videos for YouTube, and I then eventually also did. And this was like in mid-2021. I, at this point in time, had moved to a different city. I picked up a side job to kind of support this also. I also still was attempting at least to study. And, well, at the same time, I wanted kind of to turn this into maybe a side job at least, that would give me some money, and I would be able to focus on studying and doing this at the same time. And also, there would be a very nice feedback loop eventually. If I also was able to establish new channels, and I would do this properly, and I would be consistent, then the basic idea, and this is still something that it goes on in my mind, is that if I learn something on one day, then this is the learning. But on the next day, I then can basically turn this into a video. So therefore I have a direct loop where everything I learn basically benefits me the next day if I am able to make a video about this. I only then am able to make a video about this if I have a dedicated channel for something like this, or a channel where this video would fit in. So ideally, everything that is on my mind would kind of be split onto multiple channels. Of course, I don't have to say everything that is in my mind out loud, but only the things that make kind of sense and are reasonable and also might benefit others. But this feedback loop, I think, would be so powerful, and I still think this is so powerful. And that's the reason also I'm recording this again after weeks of not recording any videos. Because if I just study for me, basically, for getting a degree, but I think I don't want to use this degree anyway, because I don't want to work for a company. I basically now have a company. I've had a company for like now 5 years, and this company is barely making any money. I still am doing something else apart from making these videos, but the idea at least would make at some point in time at least a little bit of income in order to support basically what I'm doing. Now, back to this here. I think this feedback loop is just so powerful. And I used it in the past, but I never was able to make it really work, because as soon as I then put all of these constraints into practice, and as soon as I, for example, realized that a video that I recorded was just not that good, and there is no coherent thread here. I now want to just mention a few of the problems I had. Now, the first problem is that I had to get off of TikTok, and I didn't really know how. The second problem was that I was just not good at talking. The third problem was that in addition to not being good at talking, I also wasn't really good at speaking English. So I would have, in order to portray the ideas that were in my head already, I would have to get my vocabulary up and up again. But of course, it would not be a 5-month period where I would just learn vocabulary, but it would happen over time and just by consistently recording. I almost recorded like for a period of weeks, months even. I would record about 1 hour of music every single day, and it was improvised music basically. So it was, I tried to make something new every single day, sometimes even with lyrics, but that didn't really work because, and also I quit. So I basically got rid of the improvement curve because I just did not improve at all, because I just didn't do the lyrics at least. Basically the idea was that I at some point in time would be able, my brain would be able to, in live, produce lyrics that were somewhat decent, in addition to playing the guitar at the same time, but I just stopped because it was so bad. And well, it's similar to basically every single story. In the beginning, the hero is really bad. He's in a bad state, or he's a bad person, and then over time the hero becomes the hero. Of course, now hero is a big theme, but the idea is basically you're bad in the beginning, and then over time you improve. And the bigger the arc, the better, ideally. So the worse I was in the beginning, the better I could become, the more potential I would have, in theory at least, if there was potential. But given that I could improve maybe over time. So it, for example, would be really interesting if I actually kept recording music every single day over the last 3 years, and I didn't stop like 1.5 years ago, and switch to only eventually, or only every few days, and then realizing that my skills went down again, and basically I couldn't record music up to the level that I was able to produce. And similar with talking videos, or with videos where I'm talking, up at a similar level where if I record every single day. But the problem with recording every single day is obviously that it takes a lot of time to record these videos every single day, depending on which videos you do and so on and so forth. So I eventually realized, in order to go cross-platform, I had to keep the videos very simple. I also eventually realized I couldn't use TikTok as an editor. So what I then ended up doing is just recording the videos straight to my phone. Then the next problem was that Samsung camera, every time you press record, would not record the first 0.9 seconds, 1.2 seconds. I never measured it out exactly, but it would not record. So I rated eventually, and then sometimes I timed it correctly, and sometimes the first word was missing. And I just couldn't resolve this problem. It seems to be, well, I don't know where the problem is coming from. So there were a lot of minor problems like this on the way, but there were also a few of the bigger problems, like how would I actually structure all of the different channels across all of these platforms, and how many channels should I do, and how much of my time should go into this, and how much of my time should go into studying, and well. So what I ended up doing is the following. I recorded all the files on my phone. If I recorded all the files on my phone and didn't upload them straight onto TikTok and then delete them, then I had to manage the files. If I then managed the files, I had to have a file system in place. And this is where, again, you could call it luck, maybe just the advancement of technology, again, comes into my life. So the first technological advancement was that TikTok kind of just came into my life, for the better or the worse. Now the second one is that Notion became a software that I became interested in, and there was also more and more content posted about this. And I eventually realized that I could take the timestamp of the video file, and this would be a unique identifier. Because I'm alive now, and because time is linear and progresses all the time, the numbers just get bigger. So there can't be, in terms of a video that is longer than a second, there can't be not a single timestamp that is identical to the other one. So I took these timestamps and then I took these timestamps as the unique identifier of every single file. And then I would get them into Notion, and I would then in Notion track on which platform which video was already posted. So I eventually also realized so first of all, I copied the videos from TikTok then to YouTube. As I copied the videos from TikTok to YouTube, just with the watermark in the beginning, because many of these files I just didn't have. So I eventually researched a tool where I could download all the videos from TikTok and then post them onto YouTube without the TikTok watermark, which seems to be also on YouTube, have been not a preventative measure, but YouTube obviously doesn't want TikTok branded watermarks or videos with TikTok branded watermarks on its videos on YouTube, on the video on YouTube, and therefore it probably disincentivized the viewership from viewing these videos in some way or another by basically not showing them these videos. So much about recording videos non-stop. I then also realized that this is something I could do for longer. So I now had a system running. I posted videos onto TikTok, and I then would post these videos onto YouTube. I then eventually realized that I had to get rid of TikTok entirely because there was just not a professional way to posting to TikTok. It would just constantly spam you with attention-seeking videos, often going into the direction of, well, into some directions that I now don't want to mention. And then, so I had to basically primarily post the shorts onto TikTok. When I post primarily not onto TikTok, onto YouTube, then I would have to maybe copy still to TikTok, and I was unsure about this because all of my growth that happened till now had been on TikTok. I had basically 0 subscribers on YouTube on all channels, and on TikTok I had maybe 100 here, 200 there, on one channel even close to I think 600 or something like this. And I basically decided to start all over again. So in the beginning I started with blogging. With blogging I maybe had a few comments in total lifetime, maybe 10 comments. Then I went over to TikTok, had in total like I think 3,000 subscribers or 3,500 subscribers. I even had one video that I made hit I think about 100,000 views. And to this day something like this hasn't happened on YouTube. So basically I decided to abandon everything I built on TikTok and switch to YouTube, just for the sake of switching to YouTube. And then also eventually I realized that the whole copying to other platforms and also waiting maybe for Facebook and Instagram to have kind of a proper integration where I could post these videos like properly, professionally, and where I could post also all videos, not just the shorts but also the long videos. And because I sometimes screen recorded videos, I had a Samsung format of 9:18 I think is the screen ratio, or 18:9. And I couldn't post these on Instagram and on Facebook, so I waited and waited in order to post these chronologically, because if I didn't post them chronologically, posting at this point already thousands of videos, just not chronologically, would just become way too complicated. So the only way I would post videos to a platform would be chronologically. So in the beginning from TikTok, I would post all of these videos, and then I post them chronologically to YouTube. Now, I could also not basically get the original timestamp on YouTube. I just posted them again. And this was also something that was not exactly optimal. Because if I post them 1 year later, let's say, or maybe 1.5 years later to YouTube, then it would not be the actual version of me at this point in time, and maybe the video would be outdated. If the video then was already posted 1.5 years ago, then the outdated version is also outdated in terms of the date. But if not, then it would be kind of a new video which I posted now, and I would have to be more responsible now. But this is just a minor detail. So I eventually realized I had to choose YouTube. YouTube was the most professional platform out of all of these, and I didn't also really know what to make out of Instagram, because Instagram is changing all the time, and then they introduce something new, and then there is shopping, and then originally Instagram was pictures, and in the beginning I posted basically my blog posts, but shorter with pictures, and then maybe I just didn't really know what to do with Instagram. And also the question of, do you post native content to any platform, or do you just copy paste the content to any platform? And all of these concepts or all of the standardization in terms of, okay, we have video, and this is either shorts or long form, and this is being able to be posted to any platform. was just something that was like evolving in the last few years, and I didn't really know if this was ever something that actually became viable as a strategy, that I would record the same content and I could post it across all of the platforms. And I still am able, or would be able to do this at this point in time. But also, TikTok seemed to kind of ban some of the IPs I used basically to access the internet, and I could not log in, and then I would have to use a VPN and then 5 different IP addresses, and then I couldn't log into this account, and then I couldn't post for the next 7 days. So I realized I had to get off of TikTok, and I eventually decided what I would do is I would pick one platform for any native content that I would produce. And the native content I would produce is very simple. Now, this strategy. Any channel that I have is split into a few different formats. And these few different formats are now not on the same channel, but are actually sub-channels. So it's a different channel with maybe an additional word. So if the channel, for example, is me talking about health, and this could be anything from lifting to running to general planning for the week of, okay, on this day I run, and so on and so forth, I would have one thing where I would write. And because the distinction between short and long would also be kind of applicable to writing, I decided I would do the short and this long format also with writing. So the general format is called code because it's kind of writing, and it's also, I could also use write, but it's a 5-letter word, and I like 4-letter words because they are really neat and short. So I would call this format code. The second one is what I would call share. It's me basically sharing something similar to what I would talk to a friend to, or how I would talk to a friend to, and it's basically this format. And I would maybe use something like this when talking to a friend, but I would not screen record my phone, and then I couldn't intersect, I couldn't basically use the phone. I could use the phone and I could show it like this, but I would not intercut basically with a screen recorded thing of a website or something like this, which again simplifies the whole video making process. Now, the third thing would be something I still haven't implemented, and basically the only thing I have implemented up to this point is the share format, which is kind of the main format up until this point, and also the code format. Now, the question is, to which extent do these two different formats now have different media formats? Now, there are in total, I think, 3 different media formats which one can distinguish. Now, the first one is something that is a picture. What a picture is, at least in kind of Latin words, is something that is visual. Now, visual comes kind of from Latin. It's from videre. Videre means to see, and I think Veni vidi vici, veni vidi, I came, I saw. So vidi has to be the singular and plural, not plural, is singular in first form. But nonetheless, the visual is kind of the thing here. I'm getting on a tangent. The second part is audio. And now if you put something that is visual is, for example, a text, but it is mostly static. If you add basically time and audio to something that is visual, then you have video. So the video is the kind of combination of the 2 other formats before. Now, out of the media landscape, you can basically categorize almost anything into these different buckets. What is a newspaper? It is something visual, that is static, that you can look at. And then you look through the text thing. What is a book? Visual. What is a podcast? Originally, it's kind of audio. What is a video podcast? It's video. But a podcast now also can be visual if there is a description that is on the website and lists basically a transcript of the podcast. And it can also be something that is visual. But because now one can bucket everything into these 3 different buckets, I can also bucket my different formats into these different buckets. So the idea now is that I sometimes just want to write. And if I want to write, then video again, because it's kind of the combined format, is also the format that probably attracts more viewership compared to something that is text-based and with images. Fewer people probably read compared to people who watch a video. So if I already wrote something that is code, I would then come up with some idea to turn it into video. The best idea I had up until to this point was to screen record the thing I wrote with my phone basically. Why screen record? Because then I would also have the images and links I inserted, and otherwise I would have to either switch between the formats, so either having me and then read from the screen, but then if I have an image and the text relies on the image or a graph, then I would have to explain the graph, so there is no proper translation from like something that is purely visual into something that is just audio. I mean, audiobooks do it all the time, but books are also written in a way that it is mostly text usually, and not so much a picture book. So I would translate code into videos, and because the videos then had audio, I would also have a podcast. So now the idea is that every single of these sub-brands is basically also available in these 3 different formats. Not all the time. So something that is visual translates basically into audio and video. Something that is video, I don't have then a visual version, but I do have an audio version, which is just the audio of the video. You could listen to this and maybe if I don't put too much effort into explaining things and saying this and this and this and this, then you would also understand it if you just listen to the audio, and then I would have basically a podcast. And because podcast and video podcast and it's merging and all that, and basically what is the distinction between the two and what should be podcast and what should be video podcast, but video podcast is watched by more people compared to audio, but then also audio is more practical and you can listen to audio while you're working out and so on and so forth. Benefits to both, therefore I decided kind of to do both, and I still am kind of running on this track or train or whatever you want to call it. Now, there is also a different format, and this different format is just something that is the same topic, maybe health, for example, but then, and it is also me mostly, so it's me sharing things about mostly my life that I've learned, or I don't know, and this format would be me interviewing people, and I would call this format show, but this format doesn't really exist, it only exists theoretically, and the show would then also have an audio component, it would be a podcast, and it would also be a video. The videos then I would primarily post to YouTube. YouTube, the biggest video platform, and probably the video platform that will also be around in this way for the longest. Not so much TikTok, I don't know about TikTok, and mostly if I think about TikTok now I have negative associations with the platform, even though it meant that I could start making videos for the internet, but not really, because I mean I just made videos for the internet, but not as a kind of business idea, but much more as a hobby, you could say. Now, these are the 3 different formats. I think now the main format should be share, because it's the easiest to produce. If I would have written something in the same amount of time that I now recorded 37 minutes, then it would still not be that good. It maybe would only be a thread. Yesterday, for example, I wrote a thread on Twitter, and it took me about 40 minutes or 60 minutes, and it was like 10 points. 10 bullet points, basically. Maybe with a few images. Now, there would also be different versions of this. And there is also an idea of, or there is also the additional capability or possibility of taking native things that I would post natively, basically, the original thing, and then cutting out something. So here again comes into play the idea that I would record everything in vertical, because then if I had something that was at least share or a code, then I could also split this up. Maybe in the future, in order to produce basically more videos than for additional channels, which would then be split things or cut out things from a bigger video. Basically highlights, for example. Now, code would be 2 different platforms. It would first of all be Twitter as the short thing, and then the long form would be in the past Medium, and before this I had blogs as websites, and now I switched to Substack for basically the long texts, and the short texts are on Twitter. When it comes to share, the video format, and also the other formats, I would only post the long form to podcast, because podcast is not really made for shorts, for example, so therefore the audio versions would only live on the audio would only be long form. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, for share, I would also have these available as audio, and in addition, I would have them available. I would have them available as audio, and I wouldn't post the shorts again onto podcast, and on YouTube I would post shorts and long form as a short. So short and long. And the show doesn't exist at this point in time. I also thought about different formats like Rear, for example, where I would not screen record. This would be an additional format where I would screen record, and maybe I've used an app, and then I would make a tutorial of the app, just me talking. Similar to basically Code, where I would also just screen record, but just not going through an app. So these are just all ideas. So Rear, I already have lots of videos. A few videos, let's say a few videos, where I basically take the phone and go around and show something. Like this could be my setup, and this is what lights I use, and so on and so forth. And maybe sometimes I would also film myself, but mostly I would film basically the other thing. When I film mostly myself, it's share. When I interview another person, it's the show. And when I write something and then I turn it into video, it's code. Into video, it's code. But the problem with this approach is that I would also have to spend the same amount of time I am reading and recording the video, again, recording the video. So I would have the initial writing time and then additional the reading time. Of course, this would be maybe a little bit higher quality because it is written, and therefore I maybe have revised the thing again. But this is still a large problem. So maybe I shouldn't turn all of these into videos. Maybe I just write for the sake of writing, and whenever I make a video, I just go on this. But then what if I make a video about something very similar I also wrote recently about? So all of these questions of separating these different formats are something that held me up quite a while. And then screen would just be screen recordings. Now, that's basically the main strategy I'm still using up to this point. I do have a few different channels which focus on a few different topics. Then I would eventually either make money by AdSense, mostly on YouTube. I thought of a couple of times about setting up a Patreon or doing something similar to this, or, well, the problem I think is that it takes away from my time. And as it takes away from my time, it takes away basically from my growth, because I could improve making videos and I could produce more videos, and therefore maybe the cake, basically the pie, would overall grow. Whereas if I focus on making content just for Patreon or something like this, then this content wouldn't be available. It would only contribute to basically the existing subscribers to Patreon. So I never really followed this. The idea that everything I make should be kind of accessible to everyone. And I think it is just, so this idea is still here. And I think it also is the most simple idea. I just make videos and I keep them as simple as possible. And then ideally I target them with different channels. And the better I'm able to do this, the more people I potentially reach. And then maybe I can make money through AdSense, or maybe on a health channel, for example, I link something that I've used. So affiliate marketing or sponsorships, not so much, because sponsorships would mean that I basically would devalue my own opinion. Similar. So Huberman, for example, is often criticized for his sponsorships. Now, whether this is a good strategy or not, or on the ethics of that, I am not. Huberman, for example, helped me a lot, and he made this for free because of the sponsors, or because of the sponsorships. He is able to do this kind of for free, and therefore I can listen to it. I wouldn't be subscribed to Huberman. Huberman also has, for example, something similar to Patreon, which he kind of made himself. It's called Huberman Premium, and I'm not subscribed to it because I currently can listen to all of the episodes for free, and therefore I am not subscribed to it. If I subscribe to all of the things I listen to, then I would be broke already. So therefore, the idea is to make everything free and also everything accessible, because every potential video, every new piece of content I produce, whether it's something that is written or something that is a video, is potentially attracting new eyeballs, and also is potentially something that is useful to people. And therefore, if I would put some of it behind a paywall, apart from the fact that nobody at this point in time would pay for the paywall, then this would only take away from my potential growth, and also it would just be a suboptimal strategy, I think. So the idea is to make money through affiliate, because I don't think sponsorships is a fit for anything that I would like to do, because it is basically devaluing my own voice, my own opinion. And I mean, ads to a certain extent also are, and sponsorships are also kind of ads, but ads, if they are kind of independent of the content I am doing, then they are not so much associated with me. Whereas if I made, for example, similar to Huberman, where I would talk about AG1 in my voice using the same kind of format like I do for all of the other videos, then I think it would be diluting or polluting my voice, what I am saying, basically. And maybe affiliate marketing does this also already, and this would be a point to not do affiliate marketing, but at some point in time I think I have to monetize this somehow, otherwise I can't justify the use of my time for something like this. Apart from the fact that it might give me some relief talking about the things I already did, or it might give me some confirmation, or I don't know. Well, that's kind of the end of the story. I now have, in total, mostly still from TikTok, but I now am not able to track the views on TikTok anymore because I cannot log in to most of my accounts, maybe sometimes, but I haven't logged into TikTok for months basically at this point in time. Also, because it is simply something I don't want to do. I don't want to waste any more of my time watching anything on TikTok. And even though I make videos for TikTok, the average content piece, I would say, on TikTok is not something I would like to spend my time watching. Now, I still watch YouTube, and of course now this is my personal consumption, which also sometimes feeds into what I'm talking about in the videos that I make. But what I'm trying to say here is the following. The conclusion of these three years of making videos is the following. In order to make videos on a high quality level, given the constraints that I have, that I just talk freely about one given topic and then I press start and ideally stop after quite some time, I have to keep recording. Because if I don't keep recording, then I'm stumbling over words in every single sentence, and I mumble, and my voice is not as good as it could be, and so on and so forth. So there is basically a certain frequency of recording videos, or a certain time or duration per week or per day. Of course, the day cannot always be the unit of measurement, because there are some days where I can't record videos due to other constraints. But then, if I don't record videos, and I don't specifically talk a lot more in these days, then my ability to produce videos goes down. Mostly because of the voice, and not of the voice, but of the speaking, and so on and so forth. There are also a few other constraints, such as my mental performance going down after like 40 minutes, for example, and then going down, and then it might go up again, or in the different phases of the day it might be better and worse, and maybe I can talk faster in the beginning of the day because I'm mentally sharper compared to the rest of the day, and maybe I should do the videos there. Overall, I am currently in a state where I don't really know whether this is something I should do. I basically recently quit with making videos, mostly because I realized that to some extent the social pressure of being in a library, for example, for studying or also for working is just better. And also maybe I shouldn't focus on videos when I could also do something that is more direct to consumer, where I would not have to pray that somebody will find something that I make ever interesting, and then maybe in the future I could make money from this in order to support, basically in order to buy food and pay rent. So I don't really know what to make of the video production, because it still requires time. I try to automate a lot of the processes. I try to keep all of the things as simple as possible. I recently even got I bought 2 new shirts which are completely black, and not only for producing videos. For producing videos, they actually are not that good, because my face is then overexposed compared to the rest, because the rest of the picture is so bright. If I have something that is bright, and also now I have auto exposure on, which is also not that practical. Results. I in total have probably, I don't know, anywhere from 1 to maybe at max 3 million views on all of the channels and all of the platforms and all of the content pieces that I was able to track. TikTok, for example, did never give me insight into lifetime views. I don't know if it does it now, but YouTube, for example, does. Another reason why I switched to YouTube, because you just have the analytics in YouTube, and then TikTok, it kind of says, oh, the last 7 days you did like this, and you can't even access them properly. Also, YouTube has an API, and maybe in the future I would make a tracking tool there, but in total I just don't track the views mostly. I just every few weeks put the new YouTube numbers into an Excel spreadsheet, and then I see how many have subscribed. And if I open this spreadsheet up and I then take a look at the dashboard, then what I see is that in total I have on Facebook 496 followers on all of the pages. So these are kind of totals over all of the pages each, and basically totals across all platforms, all of the pages and all of the content pieces I ever produce. If some thing was read once, then I also count it as a view, for example. And also, if the podcast gave me a subscriber metric, then I also included this. I also tried just doing podcast for a while. I also had a podcast with a friend, but this also didn't really work out. Again, it eventually would have not worked out anyway, because it is something that is out of my control, whether the other person wants to record with me all the time. So, not all the time, but whenever we would do a podcast. Now, alright, in total, all of the views I ever tracked, and now I also deleted lots of views already, because I sometimes deleted channels, or I deleted a large portion of videos that I made for TikTok. I deleted because it was not in line with the newer content strategy. So therefore the now properly tracked views, even though I in theory or also in practice would have more views because I produced these videos, and sometimes these videos are still online but just unlisted. Sometimes I deleted those. But I sometimes used images which I did not have the rights to. I mean, most of everybody on the internet does, but you could also get basically accused of doing this and then pay a few hundred thousands or thousands for using that image. So I decided to try to not do this, or do it to a lesser degree, or also not rely on stitches on TikTok and so on and so forth. So I deleted most of these views. So in total now I have 750,000 views, and this is the most recent update I made, which is a few months old, I guess. But in the last months, there are probably not that many views that came to these views. In terms of likes, it's 32,000 likes in 3 years. In terms of followers, I think I still have included the ones from TikTok. I mean, these channels are still active. For the most part, I did unlist a few of the videos, or private a few of the videos that were not in line with the new strategy. But it's 2,700 followers, so previously I was wrong about the number. Then it's in total about 5,000 posts, which might be more or less accurate. It might also be a little bit more, I don't know exactly, because I've also kind of stopped tracking the posts to a certain degree, because it was not very convenient to track these, and how much time do I want to spend tracking all of these things versus producing content that I think is good, and then maybe use this as a proxy for the quality of the content. Watch time should be only from YouTube, so this is only from YouTube. It's not from TikTok, and is also, I think, is not from podcasts, or it might be from podcasts. So if a podcast has a watch time, I'm not sure. So I did the podcast mostly with Anchor, and then Anchor was bought by Spotify, and now it's Spotify for Podcasters. That's the name of the platform. And watch time in total is 550 hours for all of my content, but this is mostly from YouTube, from the shorts, which I then reposted again. So in the beginning, I took the TikToks and I posted them to YouTube watermarked. I achieved a few views on there, and then I deleted all of those again, and I reposted all of those with basically no watermarks. So I deleted a lot of views again on there, but probably not so much that it falls into that it would be too relevant. Now, in terms of followers for the blog, I have 0. There are 0 followers on Substack, and also of the old blogs on my pages, on my websites, which I have now mostly unlisted because they were just too much of maintenance work and also maybe a security risk. On Facebook, I have, for some reason, 469 followers. Then on Instagram, I in total only have 137 followers, but I still didn't start Instagram basically as a strategy, and also didn't start Facebook really as a strategy. So basically, I started a few times testing out a few things, and then I deleted all of the videos I posted on there because I just was not sure what the proper strategy would be, and if they ever would allow also other formats, which I already had, 9x18 for example, for screen recordings. And so therefore I basically didn't start posting on Facebook, on Instagram. And I also recently decided to only have one platform for every piece, for every media type. So it would be Twitter for short blog, it would be Substack for long blog, it would be YouTube for short video, it would be YouTube for long video. And then I additionally offer the option to listen to the long videos in audio form. That's basically it, and that's what I simplified all of the link trees, which is the website, the linking tool I now use as a kind of web page. It has these three tabs: watch, listen, and then read, in basically the order of attractiveness. So watching is the most attractive and it takes the least effort. Then listen is basically the option that is for people who want to save time and so on and so forth. And also because I have this format where I don't show lots of things, it's also still something that can be listened to as a podcast, more at least compared to if I showed lots of things on my notebook and had lots of graphics and so on and so forth. And the third thing would be then reading, and this leads to Substack, and then below this I have one single icon, and this is now X, which is symmetric and which is kind of nice because it's also black now, and it's Twitter. Now I began to write also kind of blog posts on Twitter, again kind of a blurring of the line, but I realized eventually that Twitter was just a very nice way to get things out, and Twitter was just a little bit too short, so the tweets were just too short to say anything that was like kind of relevant. So I eventually wrote threads on Twitter, and these are kind of equivalent to blog posts. Then, well, on TikTok I seem to have 1,788 followers in total, but these I haven't posted to TikTok in 1.5 or 2 years on all of the different channels. On podcast, at least from the last reading, it was 52 followers, but there is not a really good follower metric. It sometimes was defined as people who have listened to you in the last 31 days or have listened to the last episode, but this seemed to be changing all the time, and so therefore this is not really a proper metric. On YouTube, in total, as of currently, it is 256 subscribers, so basically just a part of what I already have on TikTok, but I mean, yeah, it just took this long, and I, on many channels, also posted video after video after video for a few months, actually, but this just didn't get any traction. Or it seemed to take a lot longer on YouTube to get any traction on kind of the same video. And also, if I posted the same video on TikTok and on YouTube there would be maybe a tenth, maybe half of the viewership on the same video, which speaks to the TikTok algorithm, especially for creators maybe in the beginning, and YouTube maybe takes a lot more time, or there is less of an audience for shorts on YouTube. I don't know exactly why this would be the case. Maybe because TikTok is such an addictive product. Addictive not in a medical sense, but in a common language sense. On Tumblr, I also posted or cross-posted basically in the beginning when I posted to my website, or to my websites, the blog posts, I also posted them to Tumblr because there was an integration that made this possible. On Medium, I still have 0 followers, seemingly, or I did never track those, but probably it's 0. I also tracked followers on Kit, which is a website that lets you link stuff. So at some point in time, I thought this might be kind of a monetization strategy to talk about maybe my rucksack for traveling, for example, and then put together a kit. Therefore, the name of the website, where you had all the different elements of, okay, this is my travel bag, this is the additional pockets I use on the outer layers of the bag, and so on and so forth. And on Snapchat, I just never made an account. I think I did have one personal account at some point in time when a few people in my surrounding used it, and that's it. These were the followers. In terms of views, I mean, the single platforms are not that interesting. The most interesting is TikTok with 660,000 views, based on the most recent, basically manual typing from all of the views into my Excel spreadsheet, because TikTok didn't have an automated reading or did not have a total lifetime reading or something like this. So I typed in all of the videos and the view counts manually for all of the videos I had on TikTok, which was quite time intensive, and therefore I also stopped mostly. On podcast, the views are in total 5,500, but this includes also the views of the previous podcast I had with a friend. On YouTube, it is 75,000 up to this point, so it's not exactly nothing, but there are people who have 75,000 followers on YouTube, for example. On Medium, it seems to be, on Medium it was, or is, but Medium now is inactive. I switched to Substack, even though the writing on there is kind of buggy. So I don't really know what to do about this. Therefore, I wrote basically on Twitter, because you couldn't really write on Substack, at least on the website. And because I had this strategy of only writing on the website and not writing offline and then copying online, because then there might be format issues and so on and so forth. I haven't really used Substack in a long while for properly blogging, because at some point in time you type in the letters and they just appear after half a second, and this is just not a good writing experience that leads to long blog posts. On Medium it's 1,900 views, so this was a few articles I wrote, and one got traction again and again and again. Basically a luck, or a little bit of luck. On Kit the total views are 8,100, so on Kit I also had a few views, and I also wrote descriptions of these things I used, but mostly then I realized that the website was kind of buggy and it deleted things all the time. And that's mostly it. I still have a few other things tracked, like how many code items I produced, how many short items, how many long items, how many solo episodes, so basically me talking in a long format, the share format, which I previously kind of called solo because it's just me alone, and then the distinction, so basically the dualistic structure would be on the one side me recording solo, and then on the other side me talking and then somebody else, so it would be basically not solo, would be a show, you could say. And yeah, well, I tracked a few other things as well, and I also tracked basically my stock revenue from selling pictures in there, but that's mostly irrelevant for the making of this video. So these are the results after 3 years of now recording video. What I regret maybe is that I didn't start earlier, but I couldn't really start earlier. I mean, if I take a look at all the things I did in the past and also in the last years, then it is fairly obvious that I had to go through this journey specifically the way I did. Maybe there would have been some optimizations, maybe if I would have some more consistency in recording video and I didn't change my strategy of studying and working for somebody else and maybe trying to sell pictures online and doing lots of different things all the time. If I didn't change up my strategy so much, then I would have more consistency, but the question is also how long do you want to keep doing something that seems to not work, like YouTube for the last few years, for example. But then also I have to keep in mind, so whenever, for example, I talk to somebody else, then I say mostly this didn't work at all and I basically failed. But at the same time, I internally kind of know that in 2017, I just did not have the capability or the potential, not the potential, but I just didn't have the skill to produce videos and put them onto YouTube, even though I could have. I mean, at this point in time, I already stood a few times in front of the camera, mostly then for myself. I did like yearly reviews of the last year on my birthday, basically. But all of the framework of, okay, I have this interest and this interest needs to go towards this audience and therefore it needs to be a channel. All of this developed only over the last years, and it was continuous strategic work, like writing and then more writing and then okay, this on this website and then posting it into OneNote basically. So I continuously write a blog for myself on OneNote on different topics. One is work, one is my personal life. There might be other subpages as well where I just have a chronological order and then I just take screenshots and say, okay, here's the evidence for this thesis. Not so theoretical, more like just my thoughts laid out in a more or less detailed order. I think so, whatever I think is necessary in terms of the detail, and then I just write and I write and I write, and I can go back and track back all the major decisions I made in regards to the video strategy and the content strategy and so on and so forth. And I can also additionally go back into the videos, which are less of an analytic way, but more of a conversational way of talking about all of these different things. And then if I record something like this, then I can also put this basically on my consumption list and then listen to it in maybe speed 2.0 or 3.0 and get the same information in kind of in half or a third of the time, which is also something that's a little bit useful. Now, that's mostly it. I don't really know what to do at this point with all the different things. I think I need still music in some way or another way in my life, and the only way to kind of justify making music and taking a portion of my time and making music, also improvising on music, because that seems to be the thing that is the most fun, and it is also kind of adding something, at least in my life. It's creating something new every single day, and it's mentally very, very demanding, similar to how this is mentally very demanding. I am standing here, and everybody out in the world can judge me for the things I am saying. So basically every single thing I did up to this point can improve or could potentially improve the thing I'm presenting the next day or the day after tomorrow. And if I don't, then I also see the evidence, because it is evident that, for example, I haven't put in the necessary effort into my nutrition, or the necessary effort into pronouncing words better, or I haven't spoken for quite a while properly in English, and then it also becomes apparent. So by having basically this constraint on me that I have to record for a certain amount of time, for a certain duration every single day, and then I also post this in very close time or temporary proximity, I therefore had this constraint, and I had this basically drive to create something and also to learn in order to create, and so on and so forth. And as I didn't do this in the last weeks, and the last weeks also were quite intensive, but I just realized that I think I need some of this in my life. Basically, an output that is observable by a very large social group that is not my friends, so therefore there is less of a friendly judgment on the things I do, but more of a harsh judgment on, okay, this video was not good, and you talked 20 minutes about this, and this didn't make any sense. And I mean, I did already get some critique online, and I mean, this is also something. The more I am able to deal with this, and the better I learn this, or the earlier I learn this, the more I can basically then make things without having the risk of this affecting me in some way or another. So in total, at this point in time, I don't really know what to do. I probably will continue recording some videos every now and then, because it's just something that is very useful, I think, as a skill of just talking on a given topic for, let it be 20 minutes, let it be 10 minutes, let it be now almost 70 minutes. But this skill of just talking about things and make it sound reasonable is, I think, something that is very useful. And it is also talking about things that I think that are interesting. It's basically the things that I think are the most interesting at this point in time, and therefore I just press start and record a video.